Time to fight fear with faith. Jody Paar is a survivor who is no longer staying silent. She and her guest will fuel you up so you too can fight fear. Uplifting and inspirational stories that will rock you to your core. We don't tiptoe around the truth. We steamroll it in a bold way. This is your life, and now is the time to start living it. Get ready for the Faith Over Fear podcast with Jody Paar. Now, welcome Jody Paar to inspire you.
Hey everybody, welcome to Faith Over Fear. I am Jody Paar. I am so glad you are here. Guys, this is the last podcast of 2020. I am so excited to say that we are going to pause for the cause and we're going to get this book getting out. This book is coming out this year. So we have some just in stuff that we need to take care of and we need to have the time to do that. So this is going to be the last podcast. And I have to tell you, I left the best one for the last one because I have Elizabeth with me. Her last name, I'm going to try my best. Quiroz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Perfect.
There we go. Y'all, this is my soul sister. She is a survivor. Her story is absolutely incredible. I love how God aligns the right people to us. And then you just kind of go from there and everything is so good with how the Holy Spirit moves through stories and moves through experience and moves through breakthrough and moves through all these things. So I had to put my bling glasses on for this podcast because girl, sparkle. And when if people hear what you have been through, they're like, how do you sparkle? How do you have this smile on you? And we're going to get to that a little bit later. But first of all, Elizabeth, thank you so very much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share your story because you are such a powerful woman and what all you have accomplished. And we stand the same in being advocates for human trafficking as both human trafficking survivors. Woo, just chill bumps on that because, girl, it is amazing what you are doing. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me a platform to be able to just testify what I've been through and what God has delivered me from and what he's doing with my life today. My whole point of my theme of my story is to basically give hope to others and to let people know that faith is going to get you through everything over fear. Yeah, there's going to be times that we have fear, but just pray for that courage to walk through the fear and hold on to that faith. It just takes a mustard seed of faith, but walk into that battlefield with that faith and you're going to get through it because God is always behind us. So that's the theme of my story.
Yes, I love that. Come on, girl. Yes.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, so we always go to the dark side, and
yes.
So let's start there. Tell me the first time you felt fear.
The first time I felt fear when I was with my grandmother. At the age of 4, I was in her house. My mom left me with her, and there was a lot of parties. My uncles, their friends, they're all gang members, and they party day and night at that house. And so my coping skill was to hide in the closet. So that was my first interaction with fear because I wanted to be comforted with everything that was going on, the chaos. And I felt like being in a closet, in the dark and just closed in together like that was my safety net. So that was the first time I felt fear. And because of that, because of what I endured there, I've also been physically abused by my grandmother. I've been sexually assaulted when I was in my grandmother's house. So fear was something I known very well at a very young age. And the abuse continued to happen. I went back with my mother and the physical abuse continued to happen. And I had so much fear going to school because when I went to school, I used to get beat up at school too because I come from a poverty environment. My mother was a single parent and it was a low income housing situation. So I would go to school with handing out clothes and I would get beat up at school as well. And so I remember the girls would tell me, oh, we're going to beat you up after school. And I would cry and beg them not to. And I had so much fear because I wasn't being protected at home. So I just walked in that fear. And so my mom would, she would drink here and there. And when I would come home from school, she was drunk. And so that's why she was angry all the time. And then also I want to mention, there was a generational cycle curse over my family, because my mother was beaten by her mother. My grandmother was beaten. So it was all these generations, all these women were beaten, right? So that was the cycle and the tools that my mother knew. And so she was implementing that on me. And that helps me to be able to walk in forgiveness today, to understand and look from a different perspective that my mom was only doing what she knew at the time, And so, but that cycle ends with me. I'm not going to implement that on all my kids. It's not going to go to my grandkids. It's not going to go to my great grandkids. It stops with me.
Yes.
So, and I've been told, that I'm the one that's going to end the poverty in my family. I did that.
I believe
And
it.
so, so basically I had other fears as well where I would, I just wanted to disappear, but I was afraid, you know, of actually taking my life away, but I would do things, to like, hopefully one day that will happen, because I felt like if I just disappeared, people would miss me. And so I was a cutter. I put belts around my neck and I sniffed nail polish. And I would do that, just like I said, just to like, someday disappear, because I didn't want to be around anymore. And so at the age of 14, I was raped by an older man, and his friend was driving the car. And I had a lot of fear of telling anybody, because I didn't think anybody was going to hear me. You know, I didn't even know like what had happened was rape. You know, I just didn't want to tell anybody about what I had just happened with that guy, because I didn't think, okay, well, nobody's going to hear me out. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, obviously this might be love. I'm not sure what this is, because nobody told me about good touches, bad touches, yes or no. You know, so it's just, I had a lot of fear all around in general, you know? And so when I went to, there's one occasion I went with my mother, and she actually poured chemicals over my body and my mouth. We got to a huge fight and she poured chemicals over me. And I want to say I finally had the courage at that point to do something. And so I remember I heard a little voice telling me, do something, fight for yourself. And I already know that was God right there telling me to stand up and do something, right? Because that's what God teaches us, right? Is to have the courage and not to be defeated by fear. And for so long, I was so held captive by fear because of the trauma and the people that are surrounded in my environment. But at that moment, like, God still reaches you where you're at. He still reaches you in your trauma. He still reaches you when you're out there being trafficked. When you're, whatever situation you're in, like, he still reaches you and he still finds ways to talk to you. I felt like that he was telling me right there, go do something. So I got up and I ran downstairs and I finally called the cops. I had the courage to do that. And so when I called the police, they actually came and they didn't arrest her at the time, because at that time, child abuse wasn't a number one thing. Sex trafficking wasn't a number one thing, you know? So they just gave us a card and referred us to a social worker. And so at that point, I felt like, okay, I can't trust anybody, you know? And so even though I had the courage to do something, I just felt like that my mindset was so the opposite of what I have today, you know? So I just automatically assumed that I couldn't trust anybody. And, you know, because of the abuse I endured, at the end of the night, my mother would tell me she loves me and she will hold me and hug me. And so that just helped. But I thought, okay, well, all this physical abuse is just a form of love. And that's what I thought. And so eventually I was placed in the foster care system. I ended up running away from that home and from my mom in general. Like, I just took off from everything because it's just, I had so much trauma. And so I ended up going with my dad. And when I went with my dad, he was a drunk and he couldn't meet my needs. And he was also like, he also had like, he was an ex-gay member. He had a record, so he didn't have any parenting skills as well. And so like, that just helps me to be able to understand what was going on at the time. Now I can see all this stuff, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so when I was with my dad, like I said, I was very suicidal. I was broken. I tried to commit suicide when I was in his house. Then nothing happened. Obviously, God had a bigger plan for me if I didn't die, you know, because I've tried. And so, but there was still fear around that, right? And so eventually I ended up meeting an older man, and he was my first trafficker, but he came in a boyfriend version. He came in a Romeo Pippin, right? And grooming process in the whole honeymoon phase. And so when you're coming from a broken home like that, and you're broken and you're vulnerable and you're an adolescent at that, you are a high risk for trafficking. And so I felt like this was my comfort zone. He was my dad. He was my protection. He was my love. Like, all of my wrong thinkings of what love looked like, he was that. And that's why I latched onto him so much. Mm-hmm. And so he started to get me loaded off of drugs. And then that's where he started to have sexual interactions with me. And so, mind you, I'm 16 at this time. No, I met him at 15. I was 15 and he was 27. So eventually I ran away from my dad, you know, because at one point I introduced him to my dad, and my dad said, oh, you can date my daughter, just wear protection, don't take her projects. So he basically just gave me away to this man, you know, and this grown man had tattoos. You can tell he was a man, you know, compared to a teenager boy. So I ended up running away with him, and he eventually started to groom me, continue to groom me, have me hold on to his drugs like a mule while he was making the transactions on 16th and Mission. And so for a long time, my identity was a drug dealer. I was a prostitute, right? That was my identity. My identity was an addict, a criminal. Like, I had all these identities for so long, and I never thought of anything better. I was so angry with God for so many years because I felt like, well, where was he all those times when everything happened to me, right? But I know today that God was there with me the whole time because he was protecting me. Like I could have died in any of those situations, but he was protecting me. And now I'm here to be able to tell my experience of all the fears, the root of fears I had, and basically how I was able to walk through that with him by my side, how he was able to turn it around for my good and his glory. So that's why I see the bigger picture.
Yes.
You know? So basically, like I said, I met my first boyfriend, but he was my trafficker, and it was a grooming process, and he had me as his mule. Eventually, you know, the physical abuse started to happen. He was training me to look down. I couldn't look at guys in the eyes or anybody in the eyes because I had so much fear that if I looked up, he would slap me. So I always had to look down. And plus he was a part of a gang, a prison gang. So there's so much like rules with that, you know, and so much loyalty you have to prove. So I was always trying to prove my loyalty to him. And so eventually he got arrested and he sent an older woman to me. And she was around 40s or 50s. She was also part of the prison gang. And like I said, I had so much fear because all the abuse I've endured, I didn't know how to fight back, you know? And so when she started, you know, showing me on how to sell myself on the streets, you know, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to make money to take care of you and your boyfriend. You're going to do this. You're going to sleep with Johns. And I said, well, I don't want to sleep with Johns. I'd rather, you know, rob people or sell drugs. Like I was surviving, you know, because I didn't want to sleep with other men. But she said I had no choice. So I did as I was told. And she literally took my money. So I didn't see any of that money, you know, and I couldn't fight back because like I said, I was afraid. And so there was times, you know, I tell the story because I want people to know that God meets you wherever you at. It does not matter. Yeah. One night, I was 16 at this time. My second trafficker left me out there and she took off. And this was 17th and Cap in the city in San Francisco. And so I seen a John. He came and told me he had $200. So I decided to rob him. I put a knife to his neck and he was hesitant. He didn't want to give me the money because he could tell the fear in my voice. I was scared, you know, but I was so desperate because I did not want to sleep with him. So eventually it felt like years I was in his car telling him to give me his money. So eventually he gave me his money and I was able to escape that situation. So when I flagged down a taxi, because I ran and I flagged out a taxi, the taxi picked me up and I looked at the money. It was counterfeit money. So when I noticed it was counterfeit money, I screamed and I cried and I was hysterical in the backseat of the taxi car. The man turned around and looked at me. He said, you know, God's telling me to pray for you. And I looked at him. I said, what? I said, God, because, you know, how can you tell somebody about God that endured so much abuse, you know? And my imagination of God or my idea of God wasn't a punishing God. I thought God was punishing me, you know, for all the sins I've committed. So I didn't know the true living God, the love that he has for us and how he's always, it's forgiving. He forgives us unconditionally, you know? And so that I didn't know all of that. And so when he said that to me, I was really mad. But like at the time I was totally like just my down and out, right? And I said, you know what, whatever, what's going to hurt if you pray for me? So then he prayed for me. And I can remember it, like, I can remember it as if it happened yesterday. Like God was right there having that man pray over me for protection, to continue to protect me because the journey I was going to continue to go down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So eventually my first trafficker got out and he, I told him what happened and he eventually, you know, he's like, well, if you did it for her, you can do it for me. So he basically used that whole manipulation, that whole control and showing loyalty to put me back out on the streets. So he continued to sell me to multiple shacks and multiple cars. And eventually I ended up picking up an addiction of meth because at one point I even introduced him to my uncles and my cousins. And my uncles and my cousins were supplying him with the meth. And so that meth that he was getting supplied with got me loaded. That was my first time I had interaction with meth, was around 16 years old. And so eventually, you know, I was in and out of correctional facilities. You know, my family knew what was happening, but they were so locked up in that lifestyle. It's a generational thing, right? So that was the enemy was so after my family, you know? And so that's why it was just normal to my family for that to happen. And so, like I said, I was in and out of correctional facilities. I went to Valley State Prison. I ended up meeting my third trafficker. And so when I was with my third trafficker, there was times where he kidnapped me. And then again, I prayed to God, and I was like, I have no other choice. What else I'm gonna do? I need you to help me out, because I owed him money, and I needed to pay him his debt when he kidnapped me. So I prayed and I said, God, I need you to show up right now. I don't know if you're really there, but I need you to show up, because if I don't pay this man his money, he's gonna break my legs, me back out there. Like, continue to make his money, then break my legs. And so when you're kidnapped like that, you're hysterical and you don't know what to do, And so when I went to try to cash this fake check to pay off my debt, the first place said no. I went to the second place. The second place cashed my check. And then so I was able to pay off my trafficker and be able to have my legs, walk out that situation with my legs. But the thing is, I want to say, like, God meets you where you're at. I was in so much fear, and I literally, like, had the courage to pray. I just didn't know what else to do. But that's what it was. It was courage to pray. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're going through, whatever mess you're in, like, take a moment and just pray out and cry out to the Lord, because he hears us. And this is what I want to say too. James 4, chapter 2. Ask God for what you want and need. His word says, you do not have because you do not ask. And then we have, God is able to do more than we could ask or think. Ephesians 3 verse 2 or verse 20. So those verses are, honestly, you can see them in my story, because I didn't have my own relationship with the Lord, but I had the courage to pray. I finally had, like, I needed to do something different, like, besides, like, with the world, right? I needed God to show up. And so when I cried out to him, he showed up, even in my mess, And so, like I said, I was in our correctional facilities. I went to Valley State Prison. I was under my third trafficker at this point. And I ended up getting pregnant. And throughout my pregnancy, I continued to use because I couldn't stop. I was an addict, I had an addiction. And so, and when my baby was 8 months old, I was 8 months pregnant and he was in my stomach. I literally remember the day I was hitting the pipe and I was telling my baby, I love you. Why are you here? Like, I was blaming God for my baby being in my stomach, because I was so broken and I was so hurt inside. I didn't feel like I was human. So how can I care for this gift that God has given me? I didn't look at it as a gift. I looked at it as that my baby was holding me back from doing what I need to do, because my mind was so trained to sell drugs and sell my body. That was my mindset. Like, that was what my identity was. Like, anything else beyond that was beyond my mindset, And so I got arrested. I had my baby. I ended up getting I got clean a month before I gave birth to my son. And so, and when I got clean, I gave birth to my son and I didn't have that connection with him. So I ended up taking him back to that lifestyle. And he was 3 months old when I continued to sell drugs, leaving him at dope houses and continue to do what I was doing. And so eventually I got arrested for the last time. And I want to say God used that whole situation and he turned it around, right? And so when I got arrested for the last time, that's where I decided I needed to do something different. So I ended up, telling on my trafficker, my third trafficker, but they ended up sending me away for a long time. I went to prison, two different counties, San Mateo County, Sonoma County. They ended up giving me 5 years between two different counties. And that's where I lost the relationship with my son. And I get it, because I put him through a lot, but I had a lot of fear and I had a lot of hurt and anger and a lot of pain from my trauma. And so when I ended up doing that, when I got the 5 years and I went to the two different counties, I got a lot of help. I got help with therapy, with counseling. I got my GED. I learned about trauma and how I was not a child prostitute. I was a victim of trafficking.
Yes.
And I learned all this stuff. And when I got out in 2013, I ended up going to Women's Recovery Services and got more healing. And that's where I wanted to go back to school and do something different and be a counselor, And so 2014, I went to school, Santa Rosa Junior College. And then I became part of the Bear Cub Scholars. 2015, I got introduced to the Second Chance Club for formerly incarcerated students. I became the president of that club. Didn't know I can do it, but God see I was fit for that position. So he had people telling me, you can lead. I said, no, I can't. And they said, yes, you can. I had so much fear and so much lies I was believing, but God used other people to believe in me. So I was able to believe in myself to be able to reach the potential he had for me at that time. So I became the president, and for a couple years, I just blossomed. I continued to share my story. I led other people. Like, I told people about what God was doing in my life. I was just a baby Christian, learning about God, building my relationship with him. Like, okay, God, show me who you really are. I don't want to believe the lies I believed when I was growing up. I need to know who you are. And he started to show me throughout the years in my early recovery. I got married. My husband has 4 kids. I have my son, so we have 5 kids blended. This Friday, I have court for my son to get him full time. So it's been 9 years, y'all, but you know what? Fear, it's gonna show up, but you just gotta walk in courage and just know that God has the final say, right?
Come on, girl. Yes.
Yes. And so I have court, and he's already coming home. I'm already proclaiming that he's coming home. And so, 2019, I graduated to college. I was at college for 6 years. I graduated with highest honors with 3 AAs: Human Services, Social Advocacy, and Behavioral Science. And I didn't think I was gonna make it that day, but I made it to that day. I walked the stage, and I was breaking generational cycles on that stage, the poverty in my family on that stage, because I'm the first one in my family to have a degree. So that was huge. And so now I'm at Sonoma State getting my bachelor's in sociology, and I'm working towards getting my master's. I'm actually applying for the master's program at Berkeley for public affairs. And there's so much, barriers are popping up for me for that program, but I know it's because the enemy doesn't want me to further my education. He doesn't want me to have the knowledge to be able to show light and show truth and be a leader in the community. But I know this is where God needs women like us in the Capitol. He needs us making big movements when it comes to bills, legislation. Like he needs us to make a change in the community, right? And so that's where the enemy comes in. He lies to us and tells us it's not going to happen. You're not going to have the resources. But you're not qualified, but those are all lies. And so I know God's going to make it happen if that's what he wants me to do. And I already know in my heart that is what he's calling me to do. So I'm applying for Berkeley to get my master's in public affairs. And I'm working on writing a book, I'm writing on to tell my story, and other barriers come up for that because the enemy doesn't want us to tell our story. He doesn't want us to shed light and let people know like his deceiving ways. Like he's undercover all the time. He doesn't want us to expose him, So that's why, like, this book, I know Jody wrote a book too. Like, we're exposing the enemy's lies, and we're letting people know that we can have faith over fear. And if fear pops up, then you just pray for courage. Don't let the fear hold you back. And so I'm also now a founder of a program called Redemption House of the Bay Area. It's a nonprofit in the making. So what this nonprofit is going to do is basically be a safe house in Sonoma County for trafficking victims, and then we're eventually going to expand, so to different counties or different cities. And so I just know God's plants this vision in me to be able to like open up this safe house and then continue to expand all over. And I have a partner named Lisa McQuaid that she's my partner, my co-founder, and she's my partner, and we do this together. And she's also a survivor of trafficking. So gosh is doing so much. He's doing so much. And just having that little bit of faith, just walk in that courtroom with faith. Just walk in that marriage with faith. Just walk in your job because it's temporary. God always has somewhere to expand you to with that faith that he's good, that this is just temporary and he's moving you on up to the next level. So just keep on holding on that faith, whatever you have, and know, God's going to show up. And, also too, I want to mention that I received the governor's pardon from Governor Jeremy Brown for my record from going to prison. Like I've been pardoned, right? I already been pardoned by God, but the world has pardoned me. And so that was a 2-year battle because people told me I wasn't going to be able to get that. Like it was impossible. I've been denied to receive that pardon, but God seemed different. Like he made the impossible possible. And so now I received a governor's pardon, and that's going to go right in my book. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
You're incredible. Okay. You inspire me so much, Elizabeth. Like you're incredible. I'm going to try not to get emotional right now because God is using you in so many different areas that the enemy tried to destroy you with evil.
Yes.
You can relate to people who have been molested as a child.
Yeah.
You say, where was God when this happened to me? Well, you can say, God was with you. Look what he's done in my life when I turn my life over to him. You can relate to people who have been addicted to meth or are addicted to meth that say, there's no power that can break this meth off of me. Woo! You could say, let me tell you something. God broke this addiction off me. He can break it off of you.
Amen.
You can relate to people to those who've been in prison, in the prison system, who feel forgotten, who feel isolated, who feel not important. You can say, not only did I go to prison, but I was pardoned, that God turned that evil around. Yes. And I'm just listening to your story, and I'm so blown away at all the places God's going to use you and is
Yes.
already using you. And
Yes.
yes, I believe you're going to have your son 110%, because you are not that same woman that used to be. You are no longer in that dark cocoon. You are a beautiful butterfly that has transformed into flying, and your future is so amazing at what God's going to use you for. And I pray that this podcast reaches the ears of those that can put you on platform after platform after platform.
Amen. I receive that.
Because that is where you belong, because your story can reach so many.
Yes.
You know, trafficking. I've talked about this before. Only 5% of those in human trafficking have went on to live regular lives, much less succeed, much less do the things that you're doing. What an inspiration you are to so many of those silent voices out there that have been through the things that you have been through, that have been through being sold, that have been through having to sell drugs, that have been through you pimps after pimps after. You're, again, where the enemy had evil there, you are using that. God is using that for your good and for you to reach so many people.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And
sometimes too, like,
on.
There's
so many.
Sometimes like because sometimes the enemy comes in and he just tells me, like, you're not qualified, you know, and that's where
qualified.
I know.
Just shut him down right now. Can I just shut him down right now? Oh, honey, are you qualified?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I know I am, but then sometimes, like, he'll hit me when I'm in the weakest moments, and he'll say that to me.
That's what
I know there's people listening that experience that. Like, when you're in your weakest moment, that's when he'll come and say you're not qualified, and then you can't submit to that lie. You can't. You have to, like, rebuke it and, like, basically hold on to a verse. Like, I have my verse right here. I'm like, God, you said right here. Get a verse and carry it with you and hold on to it, you know?
That living word that is so important. And you know, one of my very favorite verses is Deuteronomy 31:6. You know, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He'll never leave you nor forsake you. And that's another verse that you can stand on. But here's the thing, the enemy knows where God's taking you, and he's going to put every bit of doubt he can try to put in your head. And let me shut him down now. And tell you, sister, God has a plan for you. You are going to be on stages around the world. I believe that with everything inside of me.
Amen.
People that chains are going to break off of them, but when they hear your story, your book will be a bestseller, an international bestseller. I'm saying that because I feel that in my spirit to say that to you, because the enemy is nothing but a liar. And when we recognize that and we rebuke him and we shut him down, he has no power, no authority, no nothing. And God has placed you where he has placed you for the promise that he has given you. And honey, I'm telling you, this is just the beginning of where he's taking you.
I can't even comprehend.
God bless you. I'm telling you, because most people could not survive what you've been through. And a lot of people haven't. And I also tried suicide several times as well, because it's a lie of the enemy telling you this is the end. There's nothing more for you. What you can't undo what's been done. And that's where I'm standing with you in agreement, saying, if you're listening to this podcast right now and and the enemy is telling you that God doesn't have something for you and that this is the end for you, let me just tell you, you're not dead. God's not done. And he has a future for you. And the enemy's trying to keep you from that. You are worthy. You're important. No matter what you've been through, God can use you. And you, my beautiful, beautiful sister, are a shining example of that.
Thank you.
Because you are radiant. And you guys, if you're just listening and not watching, she's radiant. She literally has light all around her. And after hearing her story of what she has been through, there is only God that can do that. There is no other power that can do that.
Amen. I receive that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, he just amplifies, you know what I mean? Like, having that relationship with the Lord, he amplifies and he makes things happen that is impossible. Like, that men that say it's impossible, it's not going to happen, but with God, it's possible. You know what I mean? He makes things happen. You know, he makes the impossible happen. So I just want to put that out there. Like, don't ever limit yourself. Think big. Go big, because you have God right behind you.
Yes. And faith is believing in what we don't see. You know, we can manifest in our hearts what we want. And just like that scripture that you said, pray, ask, seek, and he shows up. And that's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
You know, it's when you don't believe that things don't come through because you don't believe for them to.
Yes.
You know, and that's why I love that you're like, no matter what, I'm standing in faith. I'm gonna walk in that courtroom in faith. Girl, I can see angels around you as you walk in that courtroom.
Yes, girl. Because it's like
Yes.
I'm boldly praying. I'm not second guessing or being like, you know what, God, like whatever happens, happens. No, I'm boldly requesting it because it says right here in James 4:2 to you ask.
Yes.
Boldly ask and walk with that faith.
I'm believing with you.
Yes.
I'm believing with you. Absolutely. Well, Miss Elizabeth, you're amazing.
Thank you. You are amazing too. You're my sister.
Yes, you are my sister. Absolutely. And I want to definitely unite with you in this fight. And I know that we're both with Unite the Fight. Is that right? Did I say that right? I think I did.
Ignition. What is it? Ignition Freedom?
See, I get them all mixed up. Ignition Freedom.
Yeah, we're so much. We're collaborating with so many people. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. So yes, Ignition Freedom is on Instagram and Facebook. They're doing amazing things in the United Kingdom to fight human trafficking. Make sure that you guys follow them. Elizabeth and I are both on there. And then I've got some other things up my sleeve for Miss Elizabeth to do with me. So I'm very excited about that. Well, y'all tell you about it later. But do you have any last thoughts that you would like to share?
So I just want to put it out there to the world that God places a vision and mission on your heart. Don't give up, regardless of what people tell you, regardless of what barriers come up, what if you're limited on resources. Don't you give up. You hold on to that mission, you hold on to that vision, and you go forward in faith, and you just give it all to God, and He will pave the way. He will open the doors for you. He will provide the resources. He will bring strangers that you never thought you would meet to come to you and open that door for you and work and walk through that journey with you. He will provide all of that. So I just want you right now to just, wherever you're at, just hold on to that vision and hold on to that mission and carry that burden, because know that God's right behind you. And that's what I have.
Incredible.
Yes.
Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and list all the ways that you can reach out to Elizabeth. We're gonna also put her bio below that you can read about. Hey, interview her, have her, let her get her story out there, put her on platforms, put her, like, I'm gonna be promoting this girl like crazy because you're, you know, they always say the dead man walking, you are a dead woman walking. And God bless you for your testimony.
Amen, sis. I receive that.
For that. Whew, wow. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Jody Paar, JodyPaar. You can find me on my website, jodypar.com, and also all social media outlets. We love you. God bless you. Whatever it is you're going through, know this. He has a plan and a purpose for your life. So don't let the enemy talk you out of that.
Amen.
Blessed. Bye.
Bye, everybody.